Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's Jason. Scott's here.
Yes.
You doing good?
What?
What?
Yeah, I'm fine.
We're dumb. We're dumb today, but did you ever watch a movie and something so dumb happens? We're like that dumb. We're so dumb you can make a plot out of us.
You mean
You ever think that?
an idiot plot?
An idiot plot, yeah. No, I jest, and that probably wasn't even funny. So
No, it wasn't. They had neither idiot plots.
yes, that is true. We were talking about the... Help me out. What is called the plot-induced stupidity.
Plot-induced stupidity.
Where you have a character where they make such a dumb mistake that the whole plot is based on their mistake. Is that how you'd want to put it?
Well, let me read from tvtropes.com.
Perfect.
And this is about idiot plot. This trope is a term for a plot that hangs together only because the main characters behave like idiots. A single intelligent move or question by any of the characters and all problems would be resolved. Now, this is not the case where the character is supposed to be an idiot.
No, this isn't Beavis and Butthead.
No, but this is a case where your main character's normally competent, or at least one of them, suddenly becomes incompetent for no good reason.
And it's done strictly as a plot device.
Strictly to advance a plot.
You see this as criticism in slasher films a lot.
Yeah, the people who run back into the house.
Things like that, yeah.
Yeah, or sitcoms where an entire 30-minute episode could have been solved in the first 30 seconds if someone would have said something. So this is one of the things that, unless you're trying to become a sitcom writer, you probably want to avoid having your character suddenly become incompetent just to advance your plot.
Making a mistake they wouldn't normally make and not realize that they make the mistake, and then here comes the story.
Yeah, and I'll put this as a side. This is one of the many reasons I detest fan fiction, because oftentimes the world's greatest detective suddenly becomes an idiot, and now we go on the ride. You know, your characters have strengths, but you forget them because it's convenient for the plot.
Yes.
So,
Now, the definition you read said your protagonist. I think it could be outside forces, too.
well, but here's the thing. That I think that differentiates an idiot plot. For me, this is really based on a normally competent person becomes incompetent for no reason, for no outside forces.
Okay.
If there's if there's outside forces, well, that's a reason for them to not behave normally.
Okay.
Or is that what you were going to?
It wasn't, but you made a good point.
Okay. Well, what's your point that
The point I made was going to be the example I searched right now on Star Wars. The kids call it Episode 4. I call it Star Wars. You know, the opening scene, shall we quote, if that is allowed by copyright, "Hold your fire, scans indicate no life forms on that escape pod that just launched." You know, if they would have shot down the escape pod, they would have destroyed the plans. The movie would have never happened, and the Death Star wouldn't have been blown up. You know, why wouldn't you be shooting at all the escape pods, knowing that, hey, there's droids on the ship, hey, the princess is friends with droids.
Or, hey, someone could have stashed the plans on an empty pod and set it off.
So that was, but I don't know if that's kind of what we're going with on this.
It might be, in a fashion.
It's just something that logically shouldn't have happened that launches the whole plot into place.
Yeah. Well, let's take an example. Let's say you're in some sort of... Star Trek does this every so often, where they have their regular security protocols, but for some reason, in this particular episode, they decide to do something different. Like, oh, they're not going to bring in unscanned cargo into the cargo hold, except for this episode.
Oh, sure.
Because that's how we got to get something on board for the whole plot to continue.
Yeah.
And one of the problems with this type of plotting is it can usually be avoided if you think about it and are a little bit more clever in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Either giving a reason why people are incompetent or finding another reason to start that process.
And the reason it's bad, a reader could pick up on it, and it makes it hard to suspend disbelief in your story if you say, well, why didn't that character just, pick up his phone and call for help instead of...
Why didn't they run towards the light of the street instead of into the woods in the slasher film?
And an agent or editor who reads thousands of submissions a month will pick this out right away because it's one of the tropes they're used to seeing when they're looking to reject things.
Yeah. And it also, we've talked about this before, I think. It also takes a character, again, this idiot plot. It's assuming that you've created competent characters to begin with. And suddenly, for no reason, I'm repetition here, suddenly, for no reason, they become incompetent. Why did you spend so much time proving their competence, writing characters that are good at something, to suddenly turn it off in this moment for no reason? You know, you laid the groundwork for probably an interesting character that people could follow along and be, say, happy when they're happy, and then all of a sudden they're not the same character you wrote.
Right.
So you're showing some inconsistencies in your own characterization. That's a lot of syllables.
It is, but it's true. Your characters need to act consistent in order to be believable. Although I guess not all humans are consistent, but
there's usually reasons for when they act. Like, let's say someone's acting in an emotional state. When you're in a highly charged emotional state, you aren't going to think logically, but there's a reason. If you explain why that person is having this emotional response as opposed to their normal response, right? There could be a reason for someone to act differently, but make sure you write that in there. Why was the security detail different that day on the Enterprise?
Right.
Maybe that person who ran into the house, they didn't know the area, and that was the only place they knew. Or maybe they thought, hey, I know where there's a gun or a knife in the house. I can get that and protect myself. But oftentimes, we don't see that reasoning. And so what might actually be reasonable becomes idiotic. Show your math, people.
yes, show your math. That'll be the Write Good Books t-shirts we print off.
Write good books, show your math. What?
What? Idiots are we listening to right now?
Our listeners aren't idiots. We're the idiots.
Exactly, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Grammar.
Yes, grammar. It's all about just making your plot make sense. You don't want to, and I wish I had a better example. I don't like it when you know that this is something is only happening as a plot device.
Yeah.
Or if a character that should know better doesn't, and that causes things to happen. Let's get back into my wrestling time machine and just think Sting in the 90s.
Okay.
You know, how many times did he say, oh, maybe Ric Flair's good this time, only to get hit in the back of the head and get his knee broken? I think 5 that I can remember.
He didn't learn from previous experiences.
Exactly.
So why is it the characters? But yeah, that's another thing. It's like, is someone constantly falling for the same trick? Like people who watched Home Alone, all those various, you know, we get where the kid's going, right? You know, it's a one-trick pony. But you know, there are some cases where a misunderstanding is different than being incompetent. Right? But again, show where that misunderstanding comes from. Someone misreads the map. Someone doesn't hear the complete sentence from the messenger. You know, they only hear the first part of the television broadcast about, you know, the earthquake coming. Give them a reason to be incompetent, and then we'll also feel more sympathy for that character. Again, depending on all the other variables about if you're letting the audience know more than the characters. But you can build sympathy for your character if you show a misunderstanding is creating their problems, as opposed to just, well, now they're acting incompetently.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an example, right? And it's not that great of an example, but Lord of the Rings, right? You've got Sam. He's listening at the window. He's acting that way because he doesn't know what's going on. It's not that he's just like, oh, we need someone to be listening at a window when Gandalf and Frodo are having their discussion. That character is acting out of, I don't understand, I don't know what's going on. I think this is the best cause of action, right? Sam listening at the window. He gets dragged in and now becomes part of the bigger story. So that's an example of a character with non-idiotic reasoning being in the right place at the right time to progress something, but it's a small piece.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find some things that could be construed as that idiot plot, but really aren't. And see, that's a problem. When it's done right, you don't notice that because that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, here's some examples. And I don't know how many people have read Agatha Christie novels, but oftentimes in her stories, the detective, whether it's Miss Marple or Poirot, they're following a trail of clues.
Okay.
Right? Now, here's the thing. All the clues and the thought process of following makes sense, but they're going in the wrong direction because those clues could also be interpreted a slightly different direction.
Okay.
So the detective goes in the wrong direction for a little bit, finds out where they are wrong, backtracks and finds where they misinterpreted a fact.
Okay.
Right? It's not that they are intentionally misinterpreting something just because that's what the clue in question has two interpretations or multiple interpretations. And so that's how good mysteries work.
Yeah.
You have all these people who have possible motivations, and until you get a bigger picture of it, you do go down wrong paths. So that is someone that's not an idiot plot.
Right. And in those cases, the characters have choices to make.
Right. They have some agency in that choice.
And if they make the wrong choice, it fits.
Right.
And the so-called idiot plotting, they're making the illogical choice just to drive the plot.
Right. And that's the difference. In these cases, there are multiple logical choices, and they have to choose one, and sometimes they choose wrong. That's not what we're talking about, people being incompetent all of a sudden. That's someone just making a logical, perfectly good choice that was the wrong one in that case.
Yeah. It'd be like, maybe this is a cheap example, but say you have a superhero with X-ray vision, but for your plot, he needs to not know what's on the other side of the wall, so you just have him not use his X-ray vision so that he can walk through the door and get attacked. Or something like that.
And you see that sometimes in comic book writing. It's like a character will have a superpower some days, but other days forget that they could do it.
Which is something I need to watch out for personally, as I'm trying to work on this fantasy thing and trying to keep my magic consistent. That may be a podcast someday too.
Yeah, very possibly.
World building magic is hard.
Yeah. Now, there is a spin on this whole topic. Now, there is a twist with the idiot plot that I believe I've seen once before, and it was brilliant. But they start writing, and the characters are seemingly making these idiot plot things, but then the author is finding ways to show that what normally is the idiot plot works. And so they become unintentionally competent, right? All their incompetent choices turns out to be the right choice. It's done as a farce, right? And it's done for humorous intent. Those are some key things. But it plays upon our being able to point out they're just doing that to move the plot along, and then all of a sudden that becomes the right decision at the time due to sheer luck and not out of competency. And it kind of turns out on its head, and it's a great effect if it's done well. And if it's not done well, you're doubly messed up. But that might be something that people could, take those tropes that we've talked about, running it back into the house, or ignoring the security guidelines, or not talking to someone about something just because you don't want to talk about it. And we just canceled half the sitcoms in existence.
Well, sitcoms, people in the characters in sitcoms are usually intentionally stupid or make bad decisions.
Yeah, granted, it's not reality based, right? It's a situation comedy, especially modern day ones. Modern day, there's a lot of two-dimensional. This person's only there to be the laugh track. So
I could do a whole 6 hours on why I don't like modern sitcoms, but nobody wants to hear that. It's interesting. It's something I never really even thought about until we were talking about it a little bit ago. I guess you think about it, but you never think about it.
You don't think about the process of writing,
right.
bringing that in. Yeah, and I'm just looking at a bookshelf behind Jason's Jason's head here, and there's a book on there that I read is like, wow, that person is completely working outside of character, and the plot only happens because they're making choices that a character normally wouldn't have made.
Oh yeah, probably just about every romantic comedy is based on this.
I don't know. In some of those cases, the characters are pretty ill-defined to begin with.
Oh,
in
yeah.
some of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we should make the competent choice and wrap things up for today.
Yeah, it's time to wrap things up. Hope this helped you think a little bit, because if you've got a work in progress, make sure this doesn't slip into it. Because like I said, I think it is something an agent would be able to pick out pretty quickly. And on that note, you have no closing thoughts?
I plead the fifth.
I do too. No, I don't. I just have no closing thoughts.
So we're being intentionally incompetent.
Yes, we are. So after that, if you still would like to support us, you can visit us at patreon.com/writegoodbooks and on the web at writegoodbooks.com/podcast. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.